Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Annabelle, and welcome to Escaping Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural and talk it through in the hope that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week, leave comments on any upcoming episodes, and we can escape Supernatural Purgatory together. Hi Purgatory pals, we have a very special episode this week because we have a guest with us. Yes! This is Charlie, and actually we met through me and Annabelle doing the podcast, which is one of the great things about this, that sort of since we started doing this, we've got to talk to a few amazing different people. This has kind of been one of our dreams that we would have someone on the podcast to fangirl over the show with us. So yeah, Charlie, if you'd like to introduce yourself and
Am I your first guest?
You are our first
I'm
guest.
so honored. I feel so special.
This is also like a major test run, so if this goes horribly...
There's no pressure. If I fail, no one else will have this opportunity. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, no.
No pressure. I got to talking to Amy at some point, but I watched the finale. When I say the finale, I really mean 18. I watched the end of the show, and I went online to see what the reaction was, but it wasn't when everyone else watched it. I was watching in December. Because there was a major election going on in the US, and I was involved with that, and I wasn't paying attention, and I caught up on the entire last season all at once, binged it, watched without thinking about it much, half paying attention, and I watched what happened. Where are we on spoilers?
Do it. Spoilers are fully... I put it in the description every week, guys. If you are worried about spoilers at this point, I don't know what to say anymore.
To the point that I watched Castiel's confession, and I rolled my eyes, and I was like, how are they going to make this platonic? And then I went online, and I saw Misha Collins calling it a homosexual declaration of love, and I was like, what's been happening? And I started immediately rewatching the show because I needed to know at what point things became intentional. And I've somehow ended up with a Tumblr of rewatching the show, specifically looking for queer content and queer coding, which I have been rewarded with in spades. So whereas I was not a shipper and not necessarily a dedicated watcher before, I've now found at least 3 Dean and male relationships where I go, this was fully intentional and I can't unsee this, and how did I not see this before, and now I'm a crazy person.
As we say on here, we haven't said it in a while, but we are cursed with knowledge.
I was dragged into purgatory.
Yes.
How you would say this.
Beautiful. I love it.
So that is Dean was always bi, which ended up being sort of a thesis statement. That's my URL on Tumblr.
Yeah, so I fully recommend it. I follow Charlie on at Dean Was Always Bi on Tumblr, and you should definitely check it out if you're looking for specifically queer coded content, because her posts are amazing and really in depth, and I really, really appreciate them.
If you wanted to know what 80s movie you've never seen was secretly completely gay, and that's why Dean Winchester loves it.
Absolutely true.
Well, thank you very much for your introduction. So let's get into the episode. We are now on Season 2, Episode 2, Everybody Loves a Clown. Now, I know this is based on a song, but nobody loves a clown. Nobody loves a clown.
Did you check out the lyrics to that song out of curiosity?
I had it up, but I didn't read all the way through.
Full disclosure, I sent the lyrics to that song to Annabelle last night at about midnight.
Yeah. So,
well, there was so much man pain in the recap for this episode, and this just adds another layer of man pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So this episode was rated 8.2, which is not the lowest of the season, but it's also not the highest. It's pretty, I think that's pretty average for the show.
So this episode is written by John Shaban, and I already know we love his episodes, so I don't need to go on about it. And directed by Phil Shagrisha. I would say, actually, I do normally love John's episodes. This one was not a favourite of mine. I rewatched it again, and I was like, there's something weird about this episode, and I can't put my finger on it.
Really? So, full disclosure, when Amy and I were talking about whether I might come and join you for an episode, I said to Amy, okay, but we're not doing the clown episode. I'm not doing the clown episode. And I think in the back of both of our minds, as soon as I said that, we knew that meant I was going to end up joining you for the clown episode. Because I ended up rewatching the episode because I had said that, and I didn't remember everything else that had happened. I didn't remember that the two plots happened in the same episode. And I was just remembering hating clowns and not. I think I was thinking of the later clown episode too. Yeah. But now rewatching this, ignoring the clown parts, I love this episode.
This is what you're here for, because I thought that the clown hunt with the like really emotional parts of the episode felt a bit weird to me. But I mean, we'll get into it as we go on.
So was it me, or was the recap like extra long this time?
Oh, but it was so good. The music was so good, though. The music was so good.
Was it though?
It was good. Okay. The song. Time Has Come Today by the Chambers Brothers, and the way they slowed down that cut at the end of like all the stuff that had happened, and it just said like time. I'm here for that. I love it so much. It's so great. Like, look, I love a recap. I'm with Jensen on this. They do a good job with the recaps. Like, sorry.
Oh, the slow down and then the ticking.
Yes. Like a heart. Like a clock.
I think you're the only one who likes that recap.
I wrote. First of all, I can't believe I wrote notes on a recap, but I wrote, first of all, man pain, and then I, just as a gift to Annabelle, I wrote Dean realizing that John is a shit.
Yes. Nobody has convinced me that John is a good guy yet, so we'll see.
I don't know who's working on doing that. There's so much. They have no right to be so emotional in a recap. I wrote, Dean had a prolonged facing of his own death, and Sam was being told it was his fault, like Dean was as a kid.
Yeah.
That's too much for a recap.
That is a lot. Like, it was a minute and a half, I think, and we're already starting off way too strong.
Maybe I emotionally wasn't in the right place this episode this week. I think that might have been the problem here. But look, these episodes normally turn out like this, where I'm like, this episode's stupid, I hate it, Supernatural is a terrible show, and then by the end of it, I'm like, I love this show, I never want it to end.
The title of this episode is Everybody Loves a Clown, and I wrote down some extra pain lyrics from it for Dean in my mind of, a clown has feelings too. If you wonder why this clown is crying, look a little closer, inside I'm dying.
No.
Why can't you see the other side of me? I guess I'll be the guy who plays the part of a clown with a broken heart. And I'm just thinking of Dean being a complete, like, silly person who's always making jokes, and in this episode he's just emotions.
Yeah. This is very true.
Or I'm reaching.
No. You are in the right lane for this, Mace. There is no such thing as reaching.
What's a reach?
But maybe you can send out a link after to go with this episode. I sent Amy a link of The Simpsons, and they have a tiny doll of Krusty the Clown trying to kill Homer while this song plays.
Nice.
So we're starting off this week in Medford, Wisconsin, at a carnival. So we see like a kid and their family together, and the kid kind of sees like a creepy clown. Parents can't see it. Typical ghost stuff. And then it kind of cuts to later at nighttime in this girl's bedroom, and she hears a noise and looks out the window and sees a clown. And at this point, I've got to wonder, how were these people parenting this child that she went and let a strange clown into the house?
I thought the exact same thing. I was just like, you know what? You kind of deserve what's going to happen to you if you think that it's okay to let your child let in a clown. Like, no, you were bad parents. Mm-hmm. You had it coming.
Like, I mean, to be fair, the clown only kills the parents, right? So, I didn't like it. I wouldn't say that I'm scared of clowns. I do find them unnerving. Like, they are... I think it's the face paint. It's uncanny valley territory. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not afraid of clowns. I'm more freaked out by contortionists, and they had one at the very beginning of the episode. I'm like, why can you fit in a 12 by 12 by 12 box? Like a human should not be able to fit inside that box. That's just terrifying. Like, no. So that freaks me out more than a clown. I'm gonna say that.
Fair enough. I think, yeah.
So whose fault was it where we start like looking through a red balloon and then like the bubble pops of this episode, and then of course we know what's coming after the title card.
Yeah, that was good. Like, I actually did enjoy that transition, to be fair.
But I just wrote clowns. I don't care.
Yeah. This was my problem with this. I didn't care about the clown storyline in any way.
Yeah, no. It felt very forced. It was like, we need something this week.
Light.
Mm-hmm.
The only good thing about it being a clown is that we do find out like Sam's fear. Like we know that Dean has a fear of flying. So it's kind of nice that like we find out what Sam's afraid of, but other than that,
it has a lot of
like,
comical moments in this episode too.
But not as many as I remember. I think I'm mixing up like the 2 other clown episodes in the series.
Just the fact that we can say, oh yes, you know, the multiple clown episodes in the series.
Exactly. So we see the girl let the clown in, and then it's the title card. So I guess you assume that something bad happened. And then it's kind of complete, sort of like 180 from the clown thing. We cut to like Sam and Dean, and they're burning John as like what we know now is like a hunter's funeral. And when I read around this, apparently this is supposed to be like a visual homage to Star Wars. You know, at the end where they burn Vader's body, and it did look like that. If you watch it,
that's true.
That's interesting because Kripke based them on Luke and Han.
Exactly.
Right.
What a fanboy.
You're not wrong.
This series is a crossover fic. I'm sorry.
I did like it. I think what was weird to me about this, I don't know if you agree, Annabelle, is that I couldn't remember them doing a hunter's funeral this early into the season. Like the series even. I thought that was established later. I guess it makes sense because we have established salting and burning ghosts, like, and bodies to do that, but
yeah, because the other hunters that had died, like at the end of season 1, we don't see what happens with them.
The 2 of them acting just when the shot opens, just awards for everyone in this episode.
Isn't this also the first like single tear moment?
The single man tear.
I was looking for it in the episode and I didn't spot it, but was it here?
It was here. It was like just before the cut to the next scene. It's just like
Sam, for no reason that would be discernible to anyone except for dramatic irony, asks Dean if John had said anything to him before he died. Yeah. And Dean considers and is like deciding whether to tell him, and then just whispers no, nothing, and then just single man tear.
Yeah.
See, I was trying to put myself back in the headspaces when I first watched this, and I was like, what did I think John had told him? See, I was thinking like maybe it was that he told him about the deal that he made, and like Dean knows that he sacrificed his life for him, and I was like, that's cruel, why would you say that? And I was like, wait, but it's John.
I think he knows anyway. Are we does he not supposed to know here?
I think he's so from this episode, I'm gonna say that he might not have known, like John might have not told him straight out, but whatever he did tell him kind of was like enough to give him a clue that there was something going on.
He must know because he nearly died and like he came back fine.
So speaking of spoilers, at this point we know what John said to Dean. Dean is cursed with knowledge, but at what point does Jensen know? Do we think that Jensen knew when he filmed this scene?
I don't know. I don't know how many episodes they actually write like in a row. And at this point I don't know how close they are to like the producers and things like that. You know, I'm sure if it was the end of season 3, beginning of season 4, Kripke was going to carry on. Yeah. I'm sure he would have explained the plan, but they are both, I mean, yeah, it's been 20 3 episodes so far, I don't know if they really divulged all of that yet.
You're right. I'm equally wondering whether the writers even knew yet what the secret was going to turn out to be.
I think Kripke knew.
I think Kripke knew as well. I agree. See, it makes me think of the end of season 3 where they had to change the ending because of like the writer's strike and like how far. I kind of think that's kind of telling how far into the future they write the episodes, maybe.
And also, there's all the rewrites and stuff. So who knows? Like that original secret might have been completely different. I mean, maybe not completely different, but like.
I feel like it was always about Sam because I just always have the sense now that Kripke intended Sam to be the protagonist and have this evil, dark secret sort of thing. Okay, I've gone off in my Tumblr about this whole orange glow thing that happens whenever they're doing a hunter's funeral. Whenever Dean's worrying too much about loss, I don't know at what point they started doing this, but they light him up with orange. I feel like it doesn't start until The Man Who Would Be King. Mm-hmm. But I took note because it wasn't here. Dean and Sam are standing right next to the pyre, and the orange is not on their faces. And so whenever that started, it started later on.
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it?
I feel like they were trying to go for more of a realistic look rather than like
in the entire series at this point.
Yeah, and instead of going for kind of using color like they do in a movie.
I couldn't help comparing it to the season 13 pyre, the opening of 13. It's just Dean completely destroyed in both of them, and that's cursed for me to say that.
So then we cut to 1 week later, and Dean is under the Impala trying to fix it up, and Sam like comes over and is like, "Oh, are you okay?" and asks like in 3 different ways if he's okay.
How's his car coming along? Slow. Yeah? Need any help?
What, you under a hood? I'll pass.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about him repairing the car.
Oh no.
Do you think the reason why he's fixing this car is because of the comment that John made in Dead Man's Blood? If he hadn't said, like, you know, what he said in that episode.
And then died.
Do you think he'd still be fixing it? I don't think so. I think they might have just moved on, taken what they wanted from it, and then got another car.
Oh.
Yeah. I have a note on the car. Because they show us like an aerial shot of it, and this might be related, so... Because this might just be bad prop design with the car. I don't think it's in... Well, of course it's not. I guess it got completely destroyed. But most of the parts of that car are not the same car, because you can see almost like the red paint underneath it where they're doing like a black repaint of it. So if you look on the inside of the bonnet, yeah, I'm sure you can see like red paint. So underneath all of that is somewhere is a red Impala. The whole roof looks new as well, I think. So it is completely rebuilt. So I said this before because it made me think of the boat, right? The Jason and the Argonauts. And so at what point is it not the same car anymore, to the point that you've rebuilt it and rebuilt it and rebuilt it? Is it just one part that's the same? Does that still mean that it's that car? Or does it kind of somehow like lose its spirit in a way, or might gain a new one? Got a bit too deep with that, Darren. You know I love the car.
So, I mean, obviously episode baby, and they go back and like see the carving in the car. He may have just taken another frame of a car, like the red car, and decked out the interior with what survived from the accident. So, I mean, you are right. Is it still baby? Who knows? Well, the thing is, Dean's not attached to that car yet. Not really. At least, not that's shown.
It's not just the car, though, is it? Like, it's the jacket, it's the music, it's the everything. Yeah. Like, he's still trying to emulate John, and the car is part of that. So, you're right. But going back to what we said, would he have fixed the car if John hadn't made that comment? Maybe not. Maybe he would have only kept, like, the jacket and things. But again, it is their home, sort of. So...
I guess, like, they are attached to that car. Both of them are, really, because like you said, it was their home. It's something that they obviously traveled in for all of their life.
But how Dean treats the car really changed. I've noticed this more on rewatch. Then in season 1, he'll throw a wrapper behind him onto the floor of the car, and I think later on Dean absolutely would never do that. I think that you're right, that they've changed his relationship to the car as they've gone forward. I just loved, after this fatal car crash, they open up at Bobby's and it's just completely surrounded by mangled cars.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very... For a salvage yard, I would have thought they would have like a workstation, like a garage area where he could actually put it up on whatever it's called, like actually raise it up properly and be able to get underneath the car rather than just like jack it up. So it is kind of interesting that they decided to display it this way.
I think in later episodes they do have a work area, but it's more like a roof than it is an inside area.
Well, at least he's not. Well, I guess we do get both of them in t-shirts, so that's kind of a plus. They're out in the sun, so why would they be wearing jackets?
No, he goes on this whole speech that I think if Supernatural was a show that trusted its audience more, the explanation would have been in subtext and it would have been understood, but it wouldn't have been said explicitly, and he just outright says,
We got nothing, Sam. Nothing, okay? So you know what the only thing I can do is I can work on the car.
I mean, we talk about, and I mean, I've talked about it before, like, right, yeah, so the car is an extension of Dean and his emotional state at any time. So I didn't remember maybe necessarily the emotional journey that they go on in this episode. So when it opened with him fixing the car, I was kind of like, oh, he's doing okay.
Well, that is later.
But the whole conversation they have, Sam asking if he needs anything. I think needing anything is quite an interesting line there, because he, like, I wonder if he's just been out that whole time, the whole week, like in the sun, like fixing the car, like almost definitely for sure, right?
I think so. It's kind of, I think he kind of almost says it. So obviously we get Dean trying to avoid actually making any emotional growth by start making jokes, you know, saying that he'll maybe even slow dance.
You know what, you're right. Come here. I'm gonna lay my head gently on your shoulder. Maybe we can cry and hug and maybe even slow dance.
Don't patronize me, Dean. Dad is dead.
My brain always goes to like potential outtakes or deleted scenes or anything. Oh. Can you imagine, like, because you know that they do stupid stuff on set. Like he says that line and then they just kind of do that slow kind of walk to each other. That's exactly where my mind went, so I couldn't take this scene like super seriously, which is really bad.
So just all the cover, always making jokes.
Yeah,
Actually, the clown, just performing Dean.
This is like a quintessential no chick flicks moment. But I thought it was interesting because like Sam immediately gets angry at his like deflection, and he doesn't understand why Dean isn't angry. And I was trying to think about this, and like I may need some correction on this, but I don't feel like when Dean is like grieving, he gets externally angry at other people. It's generally only at himself.
Hold on to that for later with the car.
Right?
But we've also said the car is the metaphor. So
yeah. Let's keep that. Yeah,
they start arguing about like wanting revenge again, and just Dean being very, very sarcastic, which is hilarious. I don't know why I find that Dean being sarcastic so funny, especially like angry sarcasm is not a good. That's the worst kind of sarcasm, but it's still hilarious. And then sort of, I guess Sam backs down. It's just like, okay, well, I'm obviously not going to win right now, and tells Dean the real reason why he's actually come out. And he's received. He said he was going through John's old phones, or
yeah, he like broke into his voicemail. I guess he guessed the code or had sat like putting it in and finally got it.
And so they find out there's some woman on the phone named Ellen, and I do like that they started to build like a hunter network. So literally in the last 5 episodes, we've met 6 hunters. Granted, 3 of them are dead. So Supernatural does have some pretty good transitions in general. Not just like title card transitions, but like in the episode transitions, because they decide that they're going to go, instead of, like I said, calling her back, they decide to go to Ellen, and Dean says, ask Bobby if we can use one of his cars. And then it cuts to this squeaky, horribly sounding minivan. Like the complete opposite of this sleek Impala. It's this crappy. I'm not even sure what year, probably early 90s.
It's blue.
Oh. It's just horrible. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like wooden panels inside, but not like the good ones.
As they pull up in this like minivan, it's a minivan. Like I can't. It's a minivan.
It's humiliating.
Feel like a friggin' soccer mom.
I wonder how much of his own like macho persona is rolled up in like owning a like Chevy Impala. Like how much psychic damage is this doing? Of, like driving this minivan places and having people see him get out of it.
Does anybody know when Dean got the Impala from John? Is that ever said?
That's
No idea.
a really good question. In the pilot, I said the same thing. When did he get the car from John?
Because obviously in America you can start to learn to drive at 16, and then you can, well, even earlier in some places, but you can own your own car at 16. Yeah, in some states you can own your own car at 16. So he wouldn't be driving the Impala at 16.
They probably were in the car together until John got the truck.
Yeah.
You think that he didn't have like an interim car, like something that he could just crash, because we all crash our first cars.
Although he started driving much earlier, illegally.
That's
Do
true.
you want my sad headcanon?
Yes, always.
I don't think he had the car that long before he went to pick up Sam. I think that John
neither
probably
do I.
left him the car when he knew he was going to go hunt the demon, because he probably thought he was going to die on that hunt. So
Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
There's an ongoing thing about giving the car when you die. You're absolutely right. So speaking of going to get Sam, so after years of being separated, and they weren't really trusting each other at the beginning of season 1, now they've been together a year, and they don't even have to finish sentences to understand what the other one is saying.
Yeah.
You notice that on the way in? They just go, did you bring the, and they say yes and throws him something.
Anybody here?
Hey,
Yeah,
did you bring the,
of course.
It's like they've gotten back into that rhythm, because obviously they had that at some point, surely.
Like me and Annabelle, we can go for a month without talking sometimes. Not at the moment.
No.
But when we come back into it, the patter is there. It just comes with knowing someone for so long. I think that you understand the rhythm of their thoughts almost better than your own sometimes. There are some really good sibling moments in this episode.
Then they get through the door, and there's this fly trap. Did you notice this?
Yes, that like buzzes.
No.
Did you not see this?
No.
Because
I guess I
they're
wasn't
walking
paying
into a trap. There's one of these old like 90s
With the,
hanging
like, yeah.
fly traps with the light.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
That's hilarious.
I think of Bug's Life. No, don't go into the light.
Yeah. But it's so... What was he saying?
But it's so beautiful.
Yeah. I watched that movie recently, actually. I love that. Oh, it's great.
I love everything about Joe's introduction.
oh God, please let that be a rifle.
No, I'm just real happy to see you.
Okay, like I'm gonna say at the top, I'm lukewarm on Joe and Ellen generally, and I don't feel like they do a good job. I think they do a good job of introducing her here, like her getting the better of Dean and punching him in the face. I think that was amusing, I guess is the right word, to see her get one over on him when we know he's like good at fighting and like generally badass. So that was good to see. And then I think from that point onwards, I think they don't do a good job of fleshing out her character much more. So I think the intro was great. I do like it, and I'll probably change my mind again as we keep watching like episodes with them in. It was funny that he was like holding his face for so long, like I can't even see.
Or I just had this. You're not gonna hit me again, are you? And then he just looks scared.
Scared and a little turned on, maybe.
Yeah.
Actually, not in this episode. Not in this episode.
So Ellen manages to best Sam and she brings him through the door because Dean shouts for Sam like he's actually worried. I did notice that. I think he was actually concerned. He was like, Sam, I need help. Like, I got punched by this lady. Like, it hurts.
Tiny lady.
And then we find out that Ellen has also got Sam at gunpoint.
Sam! Need some help in here. Can't see. I can't even see.
Sorry, Dean. Can't right now. I'm a little tied up.
Sam? Dean? Winchester?
Yeah?
Son of a bitch.
So the only reason why they don't both get shot in the head is because they call each other by their names. They say Sam and Dean.
Yes.
And then she's like, oh, as in Winchester? It's kind of funny because obviously as we go on, the Winchesters become like a name, like the Clintons or the Bushes. Like you know who they are. Like even Amy knows who they are. So it's kind of funny that like that hasn't been established yet. Like the Winchesters, so everybody knows John Winchester, probably by sight too, because he's obviously made the rounds. But they don't know who his sons are. Like they know by name, but not what they physically look like.
It's true.
So all the demons are afraid of John Winchester at this point, but nobody's afraid of Sam and Dean Winchester. Well, that eventually changes and they become the Winchesters. Right. So it's kind of cool to see the beginnings of that the Winchester name gets them like out of tricky situations.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like obviously it has some kind of like currency because like they immediately cool down. So, you know, Ellen gives Dean ice for his face and then kind of goes straight into like, oh yeah, I was going to help John with the demon. And this is why I don't know if they knew how much they were involved in the life because they both look like really surprised at her saying that, like, oh, you guys are in the know.
I mean, they seem to be more, like, Ellen seems to be more in the know than they were.
Right.
Was there an article in Demon Hunters Quarterly that I missed? I mean, who are you? How do you know about all this?
Hey, I just run a saloon. But hunters have been known to pass through now and again.
She's kind of got this crossroads where all of the hunters come, right? So she would have more news than anyone else. But this is where, again, you were talking about how much the writers knew ahead of time when they filmed this. Because there's continuity problems coming for me all over Ellen's introduction. So she says to Joe, these are John Winchester's boys. Like, Joe should know who John was. Yeah. And she says that John was like family once. And it seems like she knows John. She left this voicemail pretty recently. And maybe he's been coming around even recently, even when he was hunting the demon. And she says, I know how close you and your dad were. Like, she really knows John. And later on, and I think, I don't know when in the season or if it's even this season, they say that John got Ellen's husband killed. And it seemed like it was when Joe was a kid. Like, they've completely cut off contact. And so when did they get back in contact? Was it just an error and they hadn't really thought about it?
As Amy said, we don't really know their, like, Ellen and Joe's backstory that much, especially Joe. Joe kind of, like, she kind of becomes just a pretty face, which is really unfortunate. Because it would be kind of interesting to know, like, how long she's been at the tavern. Because it could have been a very similar situation with that, you know, she went off and came back. So she may not know who John is now, but she knew John when she was a child. Could kind of explain a little bit of that discrepancy. But, I mean, that's all speculation because they didn't flesh out her character. They just killed
her. Hooray!
No more troubles.
So Ellen seems legitimately upset to find out that John was dead. And at this point, I'm just like, if we had a team that actually wanted fleshed out female characters, and not really a team. This is me hating on Kripke. Kripke was forced to bring in this Hunter network, and he was forced to bring in a female love interest. But I just think, at this point, if Kripke was a better writer or didn't hate women so much, Joe could have turned out to be their half-sister.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
That would have been such a good plot point, because the interactions that Dean and Joe have in this episode are just so... would have been funny if they found out they were siblings later on.
Yes.
Like, it would have actually had comedic value. It was like, oh, that was awkward, that time that I hit on you. It turns out you're my sister. Okay, it's a bit messed up, but it is amusing. Like,
and hey, bringing back Star Wars, I mean, that there was always that poster with Luke and Leia, like, hanging on him, and then they turned out to be siblings.
Exactly. She could have been the Leia in that dynamic. You're absolutely right. That's so good.
And, you know, just why did they never meet Joe and Ellen? Why have they always been kept away from the Roadhouse? Unless, and that kind of comes up later with Adam too. So it's not like they hadn't thought about the possibility. So I think that they show Ellen left this voicemail like 4 months ago. I think they say at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So obviously they've been talking after the husband died. But Ellen, if she had this affair with John and then John caused her husband, you know, had done something wrong, and he was the reason her husband died, the guilt, and just there is so much there. But it completely flies out the window the second that the camera focuses in on and follows Joe's ass.
Yeah. That is such a cheap shot.
I hated it so much. There's no reason for it. It's completely outside of the style of the show. And, like, how often do we get the point of view of the camera like that?
Okay, just talking about cameras and Joe's butt. Okay.
As we always should.
As we should. I wrote in my notes, oh, it's a literal male gaze, because what they do is they, like, pan from her butt to Dean's face. Like, oh, so he's the one checking her out. Like, that's said. So it's like, oh, they're literally doing the thing. Anyway.
Lest we should have a doubt about why the camera followed her ass, it's because Dean's looking at it. Just, audience, I know you're worrying about it. You maybe weren't sure. Dean's staring at her ass, okay? Get used to it.
God.
If the trauma bonding of them both losing a spouse to supernatural things, like this could have been so much, and of course, I'm just going off in my own little world.
I agree. I think they definitely should have fleshed out these characters more, and I'm sure we'll say more on it as they get into, because they're another, like, they come up a few times now in the next few seasons. So initially they did kind of, like, dance around the fact that John was dead, which I thought was a bit weird, but I guess it's how much trust you're putting in these people. And I think Sam is the one who finally says it, and I wonder if that's because Dean had trouble saying out loud that John was dead, whereas Sam's kind of like fine with it a little bit. I say fine with it.
He's the one who can get the words out. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I wonder if that was part of that. But when they do eventually tell her that Ellen's, like, really visibly upset, but they go on to talk about, like, the demon and how they were going to help John, and the person that can help John, or could have helped John, is Ash. I love Ash. I love his character. I love the idea of him. Like,
yeah.
I wish that him and Charlie could have met at some point. The whole episode I was thinking this, like, they could have nerded out together so hard.
They could have. And, like, Dean would have been there kind of, like, awkwardly being like, let me be in this conversation. Like, I'm not quite smart enough, but, like, I like all the nerd things. What made me laugh was that, like, Sam says, that's Ash, and it's like, yes, that's Ash. They just yelled at him. Like, who else is it going to be?
And Sam asks for the help, and Dean looks at him like he's betrayed him to his very soul.
It's so true. I find this interaction quite interesting, because, like, Ash comes over and, like, talks to them. They introduce him as a genius, right? First of all.
That's Ash?
Mm-hmm. He's a genius.
You gotta be kidding me. This guy's no genius. The Leonard Skinner roadie.
I like you.
Thanks.
Just give him a chance.
Which, I get what they were trying to do. Like, oh, look at this, like, I guess, like, trucker roadie guy. But he's actually really smart. Like, but I just find it weird that, like, Dean is, like, constantly, like, ribbing on him, but also, like, you can tell that he, like, really likes him, because he's, like, taking the mick out of him but smiling at him the whole time. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
Part of me thought that was maybe why they did the very awkward male gaze shot of like, just in case you think that he's admiring Ash a little bit too much, we're just gonna do a no homo by making it really obvious he's staring at Joe's ass. Maybe this is not real. This is, not real when Kripke's still involved, but maybe it's not the writers wanting you to be like, oh no, he's not looking at Ash. Maybe it's just Dean, right? Like, oh no, I'm looking at a guy. I better look at her ass. Just to even it out. No homo. I'm gonna stare at this ass. My half sister's ass.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, because they're clearly vibing on some kind of level, like Dean and Ash, and that I don't really quite understand here because, like, he's calling him like a Leonard Skinner roadie, like taking the mick out of him.
Which is something he would like.
Exactly, and then as he walks away, like winks at Ash.
So it's kind of funny they introduce someone who is smarter than Sam, because obviously he looks through his John notes and he's like, oh yeah, I can do this in 51 hours, and they're both like, what?
So he throws out some mathematical terms which to me are absolute nonsense.
These are not parametric statistical overviews, cross spectrum correlations. I mean, damn, they're science.
Which is a real thing, but when I heard it, I went, oh, you're just making things up.
It's like a Star Trek, like, oh yes, we're gonna reverse the polarity.
Pretty sure that one too, yeah. Ever been struck by lightning? It ain't fun.
They gave Ash some really good lines in this episode. And, like, I feel like some of them could have gone to Joe. And I know they're kind of weird in a different way, but I think they could have done that.
So I wrote here, remember when this episode was about a clown? And then, lo and behold, there's this inconspicuous murder written in bright red. Like, as if it's kind of in a bar. It's just, way to go, Ellen. This felt very much like in Deadpool, whereas he says, there's a guy over there, it looks like he's here to further the plot, which is basically exactly what that was.
It's fantastic.
So was.
So, like, it felt very awkward after having this, like, bizarre interaction with Ash saying that he can get this research done. It's like, well, what are they going to do for 51 hours? There's a case.
I don't remember if anything else happens with the folder other than their quick conversation. I just wrote, Joe and Dean immediately start trauma bonding over dead parents.
How'd your mom get into this stuff anyway?
My dad. He was a hunter. He passed away.
I'm sorry.
It's a long time ago. I was just a kid. Sorry to hear about your dad.
This is what I meant by this interaction was weird, because I loved it a little bit. So, like, Dean sits down and, like, Joe comes over and they kind of, like, talk about how Ellen got into the life. So they're kind of assuming that Joe isn't into it, like, into the hunter stuff, but I don't know how she would manage to avoid it, maybe.
How old is she supposed to be at this point?
I'm not sure. She looks early 20s, so similar age to Sam, I would say, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I would guess so too.
At some point, I think I looked it up actually, and it was like there's like a 7-year age difference, and I just wrote no, please. Well, so Dean's clearly about to hit on Joe, and then decides not to for reasons.
I like the way she perfectly describes how he would hit on women, and then he kind of realizes and becomes self-aware and decides not to hit on her in that moment.
You know, I thought you were going to toss me some cheap pickup line. Most hunters come through that door think they could get in my pants with some pizza, 6-pack, and side one is up on 4.
What a bunch of scumbags.
Not you.
I guess not.
I was like, oh yeah, perfectly describing Dean at this point in his life. And I think
worked for his parents.
Yeah. So I think he like registers that and decides that it's not a good time. I think there is the whole John thing, but also she maybe understands him on a level that he's not comfortable with. It's too close. No. So yeah, so she has him pegged, and it's like, you know, I think that's when he could decide not to hit on her.
This is, of course, rather than realizing that he was about to and making this, that she's incredibly aware of what's going on, it's, oh, but he didn't hit on me, so therefore he's a nice guy, so I'm going to swoon over him. And I wrote, a man wrote this.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
you're right.
I personally don't. For their first interactions, I really didn't like it. Like, it felt off, and obviously it would do because obviously Dean's not Dean right now, and I guess again knowing like who they kind of become, to me it felt like siblings, and I was just like,
again, like it would be like Dean like hitting on Charlie, like it's just like, no, why? Like, why would that be your first interaction? Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
This is how they wrote Dean in like early seasons, though.
Yeah,
like,
it is,
unfortunately. Okay, so Sam's got something. He's got the case. He's got the clown case. They're like in the car on the way to this case, and they're talking about it. And I was like, oh, I'd forgotten that this was happening as well. Like, it seems so weird. They're going on like a normal hunt, like during this episode.
I mean, at this point, they haven't really they don't have anything else to do. In later seasons, they could have just like stayed in the bunker for the time that's needed to do like research and stuff. And we have Sam keep reasoning of like, this is what John would have wanted us to do. Take a case while we're, here, kind of thing. Like, so this is where we established that Sam's afraid of clowns.
Why did it have to be clowns?
Give me a break.
You didn't think I remember, did you? Hey, come on, you still bust out crying whenever you see Ronald McDonald on the television.
At least I'm not afraid of flying.
Planes crash.
And apparently clowns kill.
It felt like a real conversation that like siblings would have. Like, because I'm pretty sure I've had something like that with my own brother. So I'm just like, this it made me laugh like a lot.
I almost would say that's one of my favourite bits of this episode is them talking about that in the car. I don't know. It's just, it felt good. It felt nostalgic. Yeah.
Is this the first? They also sort of think it's going to be a cursed object, and I was like, is this the first time we've actually called something a cursed object? I was thinking Bloody Mary. They had the mirror, but like I don't know if they called that mirror a cursed object. And then I wrote here, he's going to touch it.
He's not going to touch it.
You'll have to let me touch it.
I told Amy about this, but so I was in an antique shop recently, because I was trying to find tin types because they're really cute. Like if you find the right type, they're like in a little case. And I was looking in like a bigger case of like all these different types of things. And there was this braided hair, and it just had a thing on it that said human hair. And I was like, Dean's going to touch it. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to Amy.
There's your new merch. Just honestly.
Just hair.
No, just like, Dean's going to touch it.
Yeah.
Dual meaning.
Yep. Dean's going to touch it. Yeah, it was, that was literally my first thought of when they said cursed object. Is, oh yeah, he's going to touch it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're saying that if it is a cursed object, it becomes a paranormal scavenger hunt, which
just describes Gish.
It describes Gish. That's what I was thinking. I was like, mission was this episode. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea actually. Let's do a paranormal scavenger hunt. But okay, so Dean questions why they're on a job, and I was also kind of questioning why you're on a job in this episode. I think I had the answer to this, and I was thinking of this literally while we were talking. The difference between them, like when they're talking about John and everything, and it's all very emotional with like the Harvells and Bobbies and everything. It's almost like when they're on the hunt in this episode, like everything's kind of back to normal. For like most of it, it's back to like how it was before John died, and I'm wondering if that's the appeal of this case to Sam, maybe, that part of it is that like they can kind of act like everything's fine for a bit.
Is this when they set up, because that theme sort of carries through the whole show of this intense, emotional, important thing has just happened. Well, let's ignore it by going on an episode of the week hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. I think they did that in season 1 too. like after Home, that was kind
Everyone went quiet.
of sorry. But after that episode, it was very much like Monster of the Week next week kind of thing.
It
like,
was, yeah.
I'm not sure.
23 episodes to fill.
It could be that, and it could also be people are not good with strong emotion. Like this 23 yeah, no, actually it's more. I'm just trying to think for TV now. We wouldn't have that because there's no such thing as 22 episode seasons anymore. They're usually just 8, so they kind of get to the point. I also don't think at this point the audience is ready for like emotionally heavy episodes every single week, and I don't think we ever were.
So offsetting it with the dumb clown plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. I think if it had been too heavy, maybe people would, they thought that people would be like switched off by it, because ultimately people are watching Supernatural for the cars and the guns and the like beheadings.
Shooting monsters. But yeah. I don't know. Also, later on in the series, they get much better at connecting the A and B plots and making the B plot, or I guess technically the A plot, a metaphor for the ongoing B plot. But here, they're not quite there yet. So they have little moments that are metaphors, but it's really just, okay, we have to counterbalance all of this emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, along with Dean questioning why they were on the hunt, Sam kind of says, you know, it's what like Dad would have wanted, and it's the first time Sam really like mentions this.
I don't know. I just think taking this job, it's what Dad would have wanted us to do.
What Dad would have won?
Yeah. So?
And I immediately wrote, well, this is clearly guilt. Like his guilt over how he said goodbye to, or didn't say goodbye to John, and like how he's feeling about that, because he's done a real like he has done a real like 180 yeah, in that he's suddenly like, yeah, this is it now, like we're doing this kind of thing. It's, and I said Dean is shocked by this also, because I think it's probably the first time he said that out loud to him as well.
Right. I think it really comes to a head later on as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely. We then, after this kind of like a little bit of a heavy conversation, we're in a fun house with this little boy, and is he on a Nintendo DS? I think he is.
It was a Nintendo DS Lite, I noticed.
It was the light one, not the original.
Enough emotions, let's cut to the clown in the fun house.
Exactly.
Keep the audience attention.
And so the dad's like, oh, I would have been scared of when I was your age and if we were in this house, because things keep popping up and doing little jump scares and stuff.
Did you notice the like references in the monsters that were there? There was like the yellow-eyed demons was the first one that like popped up. It was like a thing with like yellow eyes. And then there were some weird like heads in jars, fine. But then the next one was like the devil, and I was like, ah.
I didn't notice. That's great.
I did notice the devil, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, the kid notices the clown, and the dad's like, and the kid's actually afraid of the clown. Good on you, kid. But then the dad says, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of clouds. Clouds are your friends. And then so we're at the family home, and the kid wakes up the dad, and lo and behold, the clown is there.
Look, I just need to stop here, because no, I was out of this so hard. I don't know. I don't have any small children, right? But I do have a sister who is quite a lot younger than me, and I have woken up to her like touching my face, like wake up, and I just immediately thought like, no, if there was a clown stood there when she woke me up, I'd be out of the house.
So later on we find out who the villain is, right? That it's not, a cursed object. The clown is a sentient being. So why is the clown just creepy, slowly approaching the parents? Just hand in hand. They could have just murdered them. No, they needed them to be scared. So you have to just have this creepy approach where they wake up and get scared. He just gets the clown gets off on the creepiness of it. This is some sort of weird enjoyment.
I think it's supposed to give off it vibes.
Yes,
I think that's what it's supposed to be going for. You definitely get that, because I don't know if you've seen the new version of it.
No,
only the first.
Obviously you can't. I watched that recently, so this is still kind of fresh in my mind. And there's many moments in that I saw reflected in this. I'm not sure how much of one sequence was in the book. It probably was exactly the same. And it's like a little girl sort of sees it and goes to talk to it. And all of that sequence kind of reminded me of every clown interaction in this. So I'm wondering if he pulled it from Stephen King.
I'm pretty sure it's on purpose. Later on, they say it's a Rakshasa, and the most famous example of a creature like a Rakshasa would be it. They even say that it hibernates at 27-year increments, and I looked it up, it had been 27 years since it had come out as a movie.
Yeah, it had.
Like, this was very much on purpose.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'm thinking this episode was supposed to be like a homage to it, as it were.
Yes. Also, not less important, Dean is also 27 here, but the story is really wrapped up in like the loss of innocence, and here Sam and Dean have lost John, and they have to do everything on their own for the first time.
With no safety net.
Right. Not that they had much of one before.
But they could always call John. Like, I know he would never answer, but like, I feel like that was still there for them.
The idea of John. And he did come in and rescue them eventually. Just not when either of them are dying.
So it's now daytime, like done the ad break. We see Sam and like is it a little person? I don't know what the correct term is for this woman, but she's very, very small. And they have like this staring contest. And I don't know why. Like, I would understand if she was dressed up as a clown, like he would want to stare at her, but like, it's almost like, is it supposed to be she's some sort of psychic and is like, oh, I can sort of read that you're also psychic? Or is it just...
They could have framed this just slightly differently and had it been a joke about just how absurdly tall Jared is.
Yes.
Versus how short she was, and that, like, that he belongs in the freak show because he's just freakishly tall, but it doesn't come off that way. It just comes off as, like, carny freaks, and, like, the entire joke is that this person is short, and it felt punching down.
Yeah.
Later, he's always calling himself a freak, so this was your opportunity to join the show, Sam.
Yeah. And, like, Dean's line of saying, like, did you get her number? Like, none of that sequence sort of really made sense as to, like, why it was there, other than to make that joke.
Other than that, the early 2000s humor that, like... So, like, the joke then is, obviously you wouldn't date someone of that stature, which is a terrible joke. It's not okay.
Yeah.
You didn't realize how much times have changed until you watch old TV.
This is very true.
Exactly.
Very true.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta. It's hard, right? When you're watching this stuff, you're like, you gotta point it out, and then you're like, but what can we do about it now? Because I do hope that times have changed.
As horrible as that opening sequence was, I feel like they could have started with the way that Sam was looking around, because it's actually his nervousness to like how much clown stuff is around is really cute. Like, I was just like, oh, he's afraid. Let me give him a hug. It's just like pat him on the head. Like, it's okay. So.
You're right. I didn't even pick up on that he would just be like, there could be a clown any moment. But instead we go to saying that the boy has fingered a clown, and Jensen does this just unnecessary take.
Yeah.
My issue is that these were in the script, not with the actors.
This is where I wrote the word, like, phrasing. Like, why would you say this? It just reminded me of an Archer joke. Like, it's just such a stupid... It's such a stupid line.
This episode is more crass than usual.
That's true, actually. What were you thinking, John Shaban? You wrote skin. Anyway, so they decide that it is a cursed object and that it will probably give off EMF, so they need to go scan the whole carnival for EMF, but it'd just be easier to do that if they work at the carnival.
The next moment just had me thinking, like, Amy's gonna love this scene when she watches this show.
I do love this. So they go into the office and there's like a creepy chair. Now, before we start in on why that's funny, when I first watched this episode, and I have a very clear memory of this, I was like, that chair's the cursed object.
I mean, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, because like Dean runs in, sees it, runs to the next chair, like sits in it, and then looks at Sam like, ha, you have to sit in the clown chair.
Like, it's less that Dean didn't want to sit in the chair and more that he wanted to torture Sam.
Yeah.
It was so great. It's so good. Like, I love his little move, and it looks so... It looks so natural. Like, yeah, just acting. So they try and convince the guy that they've worked in a carnival before, and he immediately calls them out on it. So I put Dean tells him the truth in quotation marks because they've already been caught out on a lie. So he pretends that he's then telling them the truth, that they need the work. It's not so much a lie, though, is it? Because they do need the work. I was saying earlier, like, this is how we go back to normal, I guess. Dean's making a lot of jokes. Sam looks at him. It's the exact same look he gave him in Nightmare when he was making jokes while dressed as a priest. It's like, now is not the time. Please stop. The guy goes into this whole spiel about, like, how the carnival is a refuge for outcasts and folks who don't fit in at, like, elsewhere. And I just wrote down, that hits a little close to home.
But you two, you should go to school, find a couple of girls, have 2.5 kids, live regular.
Immediately they bring the camera to Dean and not to Sam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, you know, they were talking about, like, at the beginning of how the freak show was actually like a refuge, like you said. And, you know, this guy who's in charge of this carnival is judging these two people pretty harshly. Like, they look like regular folk, so therefore they have to live like regular folk.
Exact point where I go insane. Because the narrative is just so wrapped up in this idea of, like, what's normal and who gets to live a normal domestic life. And this guy labels Sam and Dean normies, and therefore they should go to school, and therefore they should meet girls. Not people, but girls, because that's the 2.5 kids, you know, American Pie, apple pie life, that's what they always say in this. So Kripke chose a genre that's just inherently wrapped up in the other. I'm gonna go off. I'm sorry. Just it's the entire genre that the show sits in is a genre that was historically queer coded before Kripke was even born, and he tried to take a queer narrative and wedge it into this horror genre, and then just was like, well, if we have Dean hit on enough women, it won't matter because it'll be straight. So, like, what's intentional? What's not intentional? At this point, I think the othering is intentional, that they're sort of trying to preserve this American domestic dream that they can never take part in. But, like, the implications of that and the symbolism of that is something that Kripke, I guess, just didn't, like, whistled and looked away. He didn't want to know. He just doesn't understand that gay people exist.
That's actually a really good point, because in the extra features that we watched on the season 1 DVD, he talks about, like, how obsessed he is with Americana, and in no way in the Americana culture are they gay people or, you know, LGBTQ plus people. I don't, like, especially with the era that you're kind of looking at Americana, like the 1950s and 60s. I mean, look at the car. You know, it's he has very much put blinders on to, like, no, there's only straight people in the world. Like, no, I'm not gonna hear it. Because this is how, like, everybody wants to live, like, in this, like, American apple pie dream kind of. It's like,
Even now, when people think back to that time, it's white and it's straight. This idea of, like, going back in time and making it great again is making it straight and white again, when gay people didn't exist.
Right. As if they just sort of sprouted out of the ground one day.
I mean, if you water the lawn correctly. But the camera immediately goes to Dean and not to Sam, and it makes me crazy. And Sam says, we don't want to go to school, and the camera just pans to how completely crushed by that Dean is, and it introduces for the first time this idea that Dean actually wanted Sam to go and get that life.
Yeah.
We don't want to go to school, and we don't want regular. We want this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he wanted it for him because ultimately, like, Sam's his kid, right? He wanted to succeed in the world and probably not follow in his and John's footsteps because he knows how difficult of a life it is. So I think for him to be now, like, outright rejecting that, because I still think up to this point that, you know, let's kill the demon, Sam can go back to school and he can live a normal life, and then, you know, I guess Dean's plan then was to go back on the hunt with John.
So that was his whole arc, though, wasn't it? It was like he wanted to get his family back together because in Home, when Sam brings up the fact that once they kill this monster, he's going to go back to school, Dean is like upset by that. He's super upset by that, but like now he's not, and I'm wondering if it's because it's something to do with what John told him.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Do the writers know it yet? Does Jensen know it yet?
But the thing is that at the same time that doesn't make 100% sense, because I mean it all depends. I think back to how long that John was whispering to him, and it's not that long. I don't imagine he could tell him all that much in that short amount of time. So, like, how much could he have really said? Because if he had just told Dean that, you know, the big secret, I don't want to say what it is yet because it's such a big such a major plot point. But if it is just that one bit, like what he has to do, I feel like Dean is like saying, you can avoid this if you go back to school. I don't have to do this if you go back to school. But as we know from what Azazel said, or the Yellow-Eyed Demon said, in the previous episode, he already has plans for Sam, and things were getting in the way. So no matter what happens, bad things is going to keep happening to Sam, like if he went to try and do like the normal life. But Dean doesn't. I don't think Dean knows this.
See, I kind of get what you're saying. So wait, so you think like Dean looks really upset here that Sam doesn't want to go back because he realizes that him maybe not wanting to go back is part of this bigger plot that's going on with related to the demon and everything, and it's kind of furthering that agenda as well as like him not living a normal life.
Right.
I took Dean here more of like if he goes to school and he has a normal life, I won't have to do that. You know, he knows a little bit more about what's going on with Sam here. He knows he's had visions. He knows whatever John whispered. And then there's the other layer, like you said, which is that's his boy, and you want a better life for his boy. But it just the whole scene just makes me so angry in finale. Because, you know, Sam says we don't want to live regular, and Dean just becomes like depressed and crushed, and just it makes me so angry in finale. Dean deserved to get out.
Yep. Totally agree.
You're right.
But because they don't trust the audience at all in season 2, they then immediately have a conversation where they spell out everything we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So I just put Dean knows he's in on the subtext. So,
That whole I don't want to go back to school thing. You just saying that to Cooper, or were you saying it? Sam,
I don't know.
You don't know. I thought that once the demon was dead and Fat Lady sings, that you were gonna take off, head back to Wussy State.
I'm having second thoughts.
Really?
Yeah, I think. Dad would have wanted me to stick with the job.
Since when do you give a damn what Dad wanted? You spent half your life doing exactly what he didn't want, Sam.
Since he died, okay?
Sam doesn't know. So I was like, you know, because Dean's like, realised, you know, you saying that you want this in there is kind of indicative of how you're feeling about, like, John and everything. And Sam's like, nah.
But It makes me crazy because they spell out so much sometimes with some plots, and then with other plots, they don't spell it out at all. So the point, it seems like, well, if you're doing a normal level of understanding and watching, you're just crazy and you're making things up.
But who does that, really? Come on.
The point is, we had all of it together before the next scene where they just say, oh, and by the way, you're just saying you don't want a normal life because Dad died.
Exactly. Yeah, they completely spell it out. Like, Dean asks what Sam would do after the demon, and Sam's having second thoughts about going back to school, blah, blah, blah. We said it all. And I just put the word guilt in bold, like, in capital letters next to my notes.
Just write it on his forehead.
It's I feel like I do get it. I feel like this is a normal reaction that people do have when people die. I like that you do feel guilty and like all the things I should have said and we never really reconciled and all this kind of stuff that Sam's going through. And I did kind of think that Dean would maybe understand that a little bit more, but he's not very emotionally mature. Yeah,
for sure.
Just all of Jensen's acting, though, that it's, you know, on the one level he's saying he doesn't have a problem. We know he does, and it's just because he's just so good. And he needs an award for this episode.
All the awards for like all the episodes.
All the awards for everyone in this episode.
So again, we've just had this heavily emotional, like, completely digging at the core of who they are scene. And then next we see like you see the logo on the back of Sam's jacket, and he's going around picking up like bits of rubbish that's all around the carnival, and he's got like a headset in. At first I was like, okay, cool, I guess they're gonna communicate with each other that way. And then like he opens up his jacket to check the EMF. I'm like, so why do you have a headset then? Like, why would you have to look
carnival workers?
Oh, why is he looking
security?
at it? No, I got you.
Because it's connected to the EMF. Yeah. So like if it beeps, surely it's gonna. But then obviously they have to do it for it's TV like logic. It's not.
That's good.
I was like, oh, okay, all right, I'll let it pass.
But they chose to have the headset there.
Yeah, I know.
I love it. Then they showed that EMF, like, you know, the Walkman EMF. I was like, it's not such a stupid idea now, is it, Sam?
It's true.
Anyway. I like the outfits. I don't know why. I quite enjoy watching them wear like roadie gear. Like, I don't know. That's just a personal opinion. I quite like the jackets and the headsets. It was weird.
It's always fun to see them dress up as like not themselves.
I think
like,
that's it. Yeah.
When they were the electricians, I was going to call it the elevator episode just because I can't get over. I can't get over it.
Just climb the elevator railing.
That's forever going to be in my mind. Anyway, just is there any reason why he goes into the fun house other than the fact it's there?
No.
There might be cursed objects.
But basically, what happened here was they found this place that looked really cool because the door frames lit up. It looks like a laser quest. Like it looks great on camera. And so they shot most of the scenes in the carnival here because it looked really good.
That must be it. That must be it because it's just like, I mean, I know they're supposed to be checking everywhere, but it's just like there's no sort of rhyme or reason. He's picking up trash and then suddenly he wants to go inside the funhouse.
But yeah, they go into that funhouse way too many times for it to be plausible. Just like to point out,
there's a lot of red herrings in this episode, and maybe that's one of them. That for a long time you're thinking that there's something about the funhouse itself. Like, they're in the office, and Sam notices that the guy looks exactly like his father. So you think, oh, maybe it's actually the owner of the carnival. You know, he's been the same guy all along, and because we've seen that plot play out also in Supernatural. Yeah. That someone was actually just immortal and living through. But, so maybe it was an accident from how often they just liked filming there, but I thought we were supposed to think that there was something about the funhouse that was.
It kind of does make sense because I feel like in the way that the clown was presented, it is kind of always close to the funhouse too. Because obviously the second time he appears in the funhouse.
Like, there's literally a clown on the front. You go in through the mouth of the clown. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's like a cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Scooby-Doo episode. Sam's going around like scanning things for EMF in the funhouse, and I say he gets scared by a skeleton, but like he didn't really get scared by it. Like I was watching, as it fell down, he like didn't react to it at all, and then he came back out to and like he kind of meets up with Dean. You know, they talk on the phone, and then they kind of meet up, and like Dean's like laughing at him about clowns. And then he comes out and he's like, oh yeah, I got scared by a skeleton. And I was like, did you? Because I didn't see you get scared by a skeleton.
Now I'm picturing him walking in and a skeleton just falls from the ceiling and he just looks up at it with no reaction.
That's basically what happened.
Strange.
That's what happened.
Hello?
Hey, man.
What's the matter? You sound like you just saw a clown.
Very funny. Skeleton, actually.
So before Dean actually meets up with Sam, he's like talking about the skeleton to Dean over the phone, and then the blind man comes up to him and is like, "What's all this about skeletons?" and like does the whole like carny trope of like we look after ourselves and we deal with our own problems. I don't know how true that is. I've never met someone who works in a carnival, but it's always that trope on TV. Dean just straight out lies to him, is like, "Oh well, we're writing a book." And I was like, I wonder if he finds it easier to lie to a blind man. Because he doesn't have to really face act. He can just like say what he wants. And so he meets them back up with Sam, and Sam's like, well, where have you been? He's like, I don't want to explain it. And then this little girl says that she sees a clown, and none of the adults can see it. And they realize this is the clown that they need.
Yeah, exactly. They become almost the antagonists in this and follow that family home.
Oh.
I found it really creepy. It turns out that apparently Dean did tell the knife thrower guy all about the like clown. That's like Sam says, he told him about the homicidal clown. He's like, yeah, you know, I couldn't get.
Oops.
Dean, I cannot believe you told Papazian about the homicidal phantom clown.
I told him an urban legend about a homicidal phantom clown. I never said it was real.
Keep that down.
Oh, and get this. I mentioned the Bunker Brothers Circus in '81 and their evil clown apocalypse. Guess what?
What?
Before Mr. Cooper owned Cooper Carnival, he worked for Bunker Brothers. He was their lot manager.
So you think whatever the spirit's attached to, Cooper just brought it with him?
Something like that. I can't believe we keep talking about clowns.
They're doing a stakeout, basically. Of course, Dean falls asleep, and Sam sort of notices that the lights come on because the girl's going to the door. So she's seen the clown. She's going to let him in. And then they rush the house and start like doing their hero stuff. Sidebar, why did it take the parents so goddamn long to get to their child? That child was screaming the moment they ran into that house. It should have taken them no longer than like 10 seconds to get to their child.
He fired that shotgun. And it took 5 minutes for her parents to like come and see what was up. Like,
at what point is there a point when the parents can see the clown? Because you were complaining earlier about the guy who woke up and there's a clown standing over him, but when they're at the carnival, they can't see the clown. So the parents can't see the. Can Dean and Sam see the clown?
Yes.
So I think that it's kind of explained of like it can change its form eventually. So I'm wondering if it's part of its game that it makes itself, because also in the very first time that we see the clown, it does disappear and the girl's like, oh, it was just there. So I'm wondering if that's more the case of like it just catches the eye of children and then disappears when the adults look its way.
Now I'm thinking about it again and the fact that only kids could see it. And again, this loss of innocence idea.
It's a very, I mean, them sneaking into this house was quite, I found quite, it had the same vibes as it did in Salvation, where they were sort of breaking into those people's house to save them. But this time when they shot the clown and it actually went down, I was like, oh my god, they just shot a guy. They just shot a guy in someone's house.
To be fair, if it is, then it's a person who's attacking families or like creeping on children. So like we're okay with shotgunning the guy in the clown suit at this point. He's in their house.
It is only Salt, isn't it? I think because they think it's a ghost at this point. So we see the clown like leave through the door, and it kind of like it disappears, but it smashes the door, which was interesting, and I appreciate they put in that point as well because it does tie into what it actually is. Yeah, it works.
So it's not actually a spirit.
Was he
it's a real
harmed by the shotgun?
I think it was more like because of the impact, and then he kind of did the whole like sit up straight thing. It was kind of super creepy. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
So something that happens that it's amazing this doesn't happen all the time to them is, why are you in my house and what are you doing to my daughter?
Yeah.
They don't actually explain it away this time. They literally, I think they just run. Like there's no kind of like, well, we're because the girl says they shot my clown. Like that was the explanation.
Which should bring up questions.
Exactly. Like surely the parents should be like, thank God you stopped whatever it was, because they surely would know that there's something going on in their town. But anyway, and like they've ditched their car, they've taken the plates, and they start walking. What made me laugh, the height difference was insane. I don't know how, like, I don't know why they didn't switch positions, because roads are usually arched, so the middle of the road is usually a little bit higher.
Oh yeah.
So it makes Jared even more tall, or even taller. So switch them, because do you remember in the Benders, it says that Dean's supposedly 6'4" as well. There is no way.
They're supposed to be the same height?
They're supposed to be
That's
the same
very
height.
funny.
I mean, again, I think it might have been a little bit of production issue where they just couldn't be bothered to change like the information, just like kept it one. Maybe not. Who knows? But this is definitely very clearly like, no, Jared is a giant. So I was like, no way. How did they even think that they could get away with calling them the same height? I don't know.
So of course they've done this to have the great conversational moment between them. Just practicality wise, if they're gonna ditch the van, maybe they can do it somewhere where they don't have to just walk miles back to town.
Yeah.
And presumably they're gonna have to walk miles back to the car to get it and bring it back. They started the conversation right at the car, and I was thinking, that's so smart. They have extra plates with them so they can swap plates, but no, that wasn't what they were doing. They were just taking the plates and abandoning the van.
That's a really good point. Did they have to go back for that minivan to get back to Bobby's at the end?
I don't know what they did, because it's not explained at all. It's just like, and because the thing, like, they're carrying all of their stuff too, so like, where did they store it? Like, they had nowhere to. The people weren't giving them homes; they were just there to work. Which, like, how do you explain that you're going to leave?
Yeah, unanswered questions. Where did they put their
Too
stuff?
many.
They're in this completely empty field and just walking for miles. Yeah. Okay, this show, they have these. Who was the show designed for? Because it was supposed to be this man show, as you were saying there. They just, with cool cars and hunting monsters, and then they pick these like hunky men and have them have these emotional conversations in fields. And if this show wasn't just specifically targeting at women at this moment, I don't know what they thought they were doing. And the PR at this time was insane as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they thought they were breaking the mold by having these two men vaguely talk about their feelings. They don't really talk about their feelings, they vaguely talk about their feelings.
That's fair.
We've talked about it many times.
That's true. There was a line here, and you guys made me think about earlier. So they're as they're walking down this road, they're talking about what this could, like, what the monster of the week is, essentially. And they're like, oh, it's not a spirit, because, they saw it go through the door. And then they say, like, oh, have we checked Dad's journal? It's like, there's nothing in there. And I just thought, this is really their, like you said, their first case without John. There's nothing in the journal. He's not there for backup. And it was just like solidified in that moment where they're like, the journal was just like no good. They didn't even like get it out to show anybody. It's just like, no, there's nothing in there at all.
I did notice that Sam seems to have the same story idea I did, because he asks if Jean thinks that John and Ellen ever had a thing.
Yes.
And like, Dean shuts that down straight away. Like, it's not even a possibility.
Well, he wants to hit on Joe.
I was also thinking, he's so tied up with Mary and like, I mean, that hasn't really come up too much, not yet anyway. I don't think he likes the idea of his dad being with anyone else but his mother.
What the reaction when he finds out about Adam is quite telling to that, I think, as well. And it'd be interesting to look back at that.
I don't remember that part. I really just remember like the jealousy over how Adam got quintessentially childhood things and went to a baseball game on his birthday. How did he react as far as that side of things?
I think that's tied into it, because the jealousy that he would see for Adam is like, John having anything else to do with anything other than them, like their family unit, like Anna was saying, like Mary, Dean and Sam. I think he just doesn't like the idea of him having anything to do with anybody else.
Yeah. So you're right. If only they had built on it at all, but you're absolutely right about why he would have shut it down.
And it's funny that, like, because they mentioned that John never mentioned her, and then Dean says probably because they had a falling out. I was like, well, there's a trend there, isn't there? John does not play nice with others.
No. Do you think he ever? I mean, even him and Bobby, I would say like Bobby's supposed to be framed as like John's best friend, right? And like it even made a mention that he tried to shoot him once. So like, did John have any friends?
I don't think he ever did. We don't really get too much of John's backstory. We get a couple of episodes, but like even then, it's not that much. I think back to when they did Home and they were talking to the co-owner of the garage that he worked at and owned. Like, that guy didn't seem to be too much of a friend. He seemed more of a coworker or an acquaintance.
Yeah.
So he may have just always been like a loner, because he was supposed to be in the Marines as well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like your Marine buddies are supposed to be like your brothers for life, but yet there is never any mention of his Marine friends. And you would think those would be the people that you would want behind you when you're hunting something that could very easily kill you.
Absolutely. Like, why did he not bring any of his Marine buddies into the life? Like, that would have made total sense. Annabelle.
Sorry.
Like, first call when everything goes insane. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They might have thought he was crazy.
I don't know. They I don't know. So I think John is supposed to be this lone wolf type person, I guess. That's maybe the reason why he has fallings out with everybody. He also has to always be right. And I don't think anybody can be friends with someone who always has to be right.
Absolutely.
You have me thinking also about the friends that we have seen of his maybe are hanging around earlier on to protect Sam and Dean. Like later on you find out that Bobby tried to sneak childhood to Dean. And then you also have, I forget his Father Patrick, who used to babysit for them.
Yeah.
So maybe it was always just less about John. Like they deal with John so that they can provide some protection to the sons.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
So Dean's not engaging with this conversation that Sam's trying to have with him about Ellen. And I think he's trying to keep it quite light, but Dean's not having it. And then Sam goes off on one.
I mean, this strong, silent thing of yours, it's crap. I'm over it. This isn't just anyone we're talking about. This is Dad. I know how you felt about the man.
You know what? Back off, all right? Just because I'm not caring and sharing like you want me to.
No. That's not what this is about, Dean. I don't care how you deal with this, but you have to deal with it, man.
So he basically is telling Dean that he needs to deal with John's death.
These are your issues. Quit dumping them on me.
What are you talking about?
I just think it's really interesting, the sudden obedience you have to Dad. It's like, oh, what would Dad want me to do? Sam, you spent your entire life slugging it out with that man. I mean, hell, you picked a fight with him the last time you ever saw him, and now that he's dead, now you want to make it right? Well, I'm sorry, Sam, but you can't. It's too little, too late.
Why are you saying this to me?
Because I want you to be honest with yourself about this. I'm dealing with Dad's death. Are you?
He switches it on Sam, basically, and is saying to him that all the stuff that he's doing now, like trying to sort of say sorry to John now he's dead, is like too little, too late, essentially. And I've just put this is angry Dean.
Yeah.
To cover other emotions.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. So this is where like the thought of like was he more prepared for John's death than Sam was comes to mind, because he's staying angry. I mean, yeah, we already know he's an angry person, but he's staying angry for a long time rather than like shock and grief. Like he kind of got over that really quickly. So that whole like whispering of whatever, like, was that a clue in for like John's about to do something stupid, and that something stupid was get himself killed. So I wrote here, that's why he's more okay with it. Obviously, we don't know what happens coming up. Like, I didn't remember what comes up, so at this point, Dean does seem more okay with what's going on. Yeah. Like with John's death.
It's the second time he's dealing with the death of a parent, versus for Sam, it's the first.
Yeah.
The shutting down of it, like, I just wish they would talk to each other like human beings for like 5 seconds. Like 5 seconds. Because like Dean gets angry, Sam's like fine, like calls Ellen instead of like dealing with that anymore.
And I think it's again like this not being able to merge the two plots that are going on, because it does, every single transition has been very abrupt.
Yeah.
Like it's not really like a good transition. It's just like, okay, we're going to stop talking about it now. I'm going to go call to get the information for our monster of the week.
Is the episode just a microcosm of the entire show? Just like emotional comedy. Like emotions clown.
Yeah. Emotions clown action. Emotion clown action.
It's usually episode by episode, but we just have the entire season in one.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's kind of interesting because I feel like the name of the monster actually comes very late in this episode. Yeah. Like we only have about 10 minutes left of the entire episode remaining, and now we're finding out exactly what it is. It's a very differently paced episode. For reasons, obviously. It almost feels like tacked on.
Yeah.
One thing I do appreciate about the early episodes of early seasons of Supernatural is the sort of the range of creatures and the range of cultures that they bring their creatures from. However, there are issues with it, because I think of the Wendigo, like that is very, very sensitive to the Native American culture. Like they do not like to discuss about Wendigos. It's like kind of offensive to them in some sort of tribes. Yes, it's kind of cool to introduce like some of these creatures, but they also end up killing them. So it's just like, well, it's these American people taking another culture and killing it. I feel like the only one they didn't really do that with was like the Tulpa, because you can't really, it's like killing an idea.
They also just very vaguely refer to it as Hindu. Like there's no differentiation or detailing. It's just like, it's good that they're introducing things a little more internationally, but at the same time maybe treating it a little more respectfully. Just be better.
Yeah.
This is where, so I said before about like the links between Neil Gaiman and Supernatural, and I think this is where they tried to do that, right? They tried to do American gods, like bringing in these different cultures to America, and this is why you see these different kind of like monsters of the week from different cultures, because maybe people have brought, like America's a land of immigrants. People have brought these things with them, or they were maybe already here, and I think they've tried to do it and they did it badly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I feel like they maybe get a little bit better at it, but I also feel like they avoid it more. So yeah, I think they could have tried harder.
Like you said, bring in more of like, because sometimes they go into detail about like the region of the country of that culture came from, whereas this one, it very much is just like, oh, it's a Hindu thing. I was like, okay, but like. Okay. I mean, it's like I said, it's nice that they brought in other cultures rather than just towards the end where it's just like zombies, angels, and demons.
Look, the biblical stuff is my jam.
I know it's not bad, but it's like it becomes very like American. And so they suspect it's Cooper, because he, like you said earlier, it looks like his father, instead of which. Yeah, I guess so. Dean's gonna go hunt down the weapon, and Sam's gonna go look for bed bugs, which I thought was the best line of this entire episode.
All right, I'll round up the blade. You go check if Cooper's got bed bugs.
I love sneaky Sam. Like, it's just sneaking around. It's so funny to me. I think it's...
He's too tall to be sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's funny. So he's sneaking, like, he goes in and he, like, tries to cut open the mattress, and of course, like, immediately gets caught. Like, he's bad at sneaking. Yeah, he gets caught. We see Dean, and he's gone to find a knife with the knife thrower, which, to be fair, is smart, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know why
Although,
he would have a brass
why would
knife.
they have a brass one? Right?
Yeah. Like an antique shop, maybe. Okay, fine. I guess they're in the middle of nowhere and they don't have a car, so they're doing what they can. And the guy's like, really helping him out, and he says, like, go check the trunk, and he opens it and finds, oh, it's the entire clown outfit.
Right. So one, he wanted him, I guess, because I didn't remember he was the one who directed him to the trunk. But also, why does he have a clown costume? He's a shapeshifter, right? He morphs into the clown. But I guess he's like, hold on, child. I have to go change. Maybe he's like the Jack Nicholson Joker, like the mouth was in that shape, but then he put clown makeup over it for no reason.
Yeah. So my other thought is that maybe he can only change his like physical appearance, but still has to put clothes on. So like the clown makeup can be easily like changed. This is preaching, but he could like make his face look like a clown face.
But he has to put on the outfit.
Yeah, he has to put on the outfit.
Weird.
Maybe he just put a clown outfit in the trunk so that he could have this great reveal, just like with the creepy approach to the parents. He's excited by strange things, and it's not for us to shame his kinks.
Yeah.
He has a flair for the dramatic. Let's just put it that way.
I didn't like the effect they did on his face to make it look weird and like do the big smile. It was very early 2000s.
The weird Cheshire Cat moment.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like it. But he disappears and the eyes fade out last, which I always appreciate. And locks Dean in.
I was gonna say I do appreciate how he breaks down this door. Like it kind of just open. It looks like it just opens. Like he didn't really put too much effort in. But his gymnastics of like rolling and then going to a run, I was like, wow, I wish I could do that. Like if I rammed myself into a door and fell down, I would be out. Give me a week.
I don't know what they call the like roll that they do in America, but I know that in the UK we call them roly polies. And I was just wrote down like, I did a roly poly.
Wait, so like tumbling or like a barrel roll?
Yeah.
I don't remember what we're talking about.
Like a tumble, so like
somersault.
A forward
Yeah, it's a
roll.
somersault. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so cute. You call them roly polies.
Yes, we do.
Love that.
So Sam catches up with him, and he's like, oh yeah, the guy thinks I'm a peeping Tom now. Like, that was his explanation. Like, he just got away. Like, the guy just let him go. Like,
so I was trying to think, like, how did they leave the carnival without getting, not noticed, but, like, noticed that they're no longer there? He was probably fired at that point. So they're like, you gotta leave.
That's true.
You would think they would get security to, like, escort him off the premises.
If his excuse was that he's a peeping Tom.
Especially, yeah. He says he can't find, like, Dean didn't find a knife because it's the blind man. And then Sam's like, well, I have an idea. And so they go back into the funhouse.
What was the idea? I think it's really hard to make the connection between what the idea was, because they go in and, like, they kind of get split up, and Sam finds, like, a creepy pipe organ and breaks that bit off, and it's like, oh, that was the idea. But it seems
and, like
the idea was just running into a funhouse.
Right, it seems like he just discovered it and it occurred to him in the moment.
Yeah. And why are the pipes hot? The monster's in there with them. He throws a knife and Dean gets pinned. And then he like reaches up for something. And it turns out to be like a smoke dispenser. So smoke, like dry ice, is not hot.
No, it's steam powered. Have you never seen those steam powered pipe organs?
Okay.
They have fairs at them here. Have you? So
But
I'll have to take you to one.
a
There's like a steam
funhouse, they
fair.
bother having steam?
Probably not in a fun house, but that's what it's supposed to be. The thing that bothered me the most in this whole sequence, so I'll go through it because I'm actually going a little bit ahead of myself. So yeah, Sam finds the organ and he manages to like yank it off despite it being hot because there's steam coming out of it. Meanwhile, Dean's getting pinned to the wall with some knives, but it isn't causing him too many problems.
Like he could easily have hit him with it. He was choosing to pin him instead.
I guess because he likes to like eat people while they're alive. That's maybe my
Again,
guess.
I don't know why the monster of the week has. He just gets off on creepiness. Maybe he just wants them to be scared and makes them tastier. I don't know.
That's probably the case.
But nothing about the monster of the week makes sense. This week.
It's a clown. This is the thing that bothered me the most in this whole episode, and I think it's because I do work with stuff like this, is that the way that he turns that pipe on should not have turned it on, it should have turned it off. And again, when he turns it off, it's the wrong way. Here's a tip for anybody ever working with pipes, and this is a weird sidebar. If you have a handle, the direction that the handle is moving is the direction that the steam or the water will be going. So if you pull it so it's in line with the pipe, then it will be on. If you turn it so it's not in line with the pipe, it will be off. It's useful information to know, and it's wrong in this episode.
It's assembled every week by people who run a carnival, and they didn't do it right. I'm sorry.
Valves don't work like that.
We also missed they had yet another Raiders reference.
I hate fun houses.
Yeah, because they did an Indiana Jones reference in Hell House as well, with Dean's like, I hate rats.
Also, this episode might have been the only time that they were consistent with like their cuts and bruises, because the entire episode, Dean has this gash on his forehead, which was in the whole episode where he was beyond the veil with the Reaper at the hospital.
Yeah,
That's true.
I thought that was really good.
They gave a time this week, so we know it's been a week since at least a week since the accident. So I feel like had everything disappeared, people would have been like, no, scars don't heal in a week.
Like the original series, Star Trek, the original series, where everything's always repaired by the next episode, but then you get into later series and they're dealing with the aftermath.
Yes, that doesn't happen until Enterprise, that they have to actually deal with the ship being broken the next episode.
It's not Deep Space Nine. I'm trusting you. You're definitely the expert here.
Only in like 2-parter episodes, not like an ongoing continuing. You say I'm the expert.
That's so
I'm probably
funny.
wrong. Someone will crack me on that.
It's alright.
So they've managed to like steam this monster, and because they use the steam, they can see it now in the smoke. So that's how it gets stabbed with the pipe organ and dies. I think it leaves just like clothes on the floor. Is that right?
That explains the clown costume.
It does.
Yeah.
I did love, while they're in the funhouse before this, Dean does say, why are we not just seeing his clothes walking around? Because they actually make a reference to how stupid invisibility is. It doesn't work. So I like that they kind of broke the fourth wall there a little bit with that. But yeah, they did it. Monster of the Week is dead. We can conclude the episode back at the Roadhouse. I guess they got out of the carnival fine. Did they pick up the minivan? Who knows?
I don't know. They literally they're at the carnival one scene, and then suddenly they're back at the bar celebrating their win.
Yeah, it didn't show how they get there.
No.
Maybe they hitchhiked.
I mean, they very well could have. I don't know. You know, that they have their beers with them. Joe's there too, and Sam's like, I gotta go over there right now. It's so awkward and just
awkward.
Oh yeah, I've gotta I gotta go over there right now.
Sam's little I'm just gonna leave now. Bye. I'm being a third wheel. Bye.
I mean, so self-aware
So funny.
that he's being.
Initially, okay, no. Initially, I don't know if I'm just bad at reading people, but like when they were all sat down together, like the look that Joe was giving Sam, I was like, is she giving him like a weirdly flirty look? And then when he said like, I've got to go, I was like, oh no, it's a like, do
you
one.
need to leave.
Look.
Yeah. Do one. Yeah.
I just remembered I have to go over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't even try anymore. He was just like, I have to say, like, even in these first 2 episodes of season 2, I already like the Sam that we're seeing over all of season 1, which is horrible to say because, like, he's obviously got a reason for being upset, which is Jessica, but, like, we know so little about her that he just comes across whiny and for no reason other than his girlfriend that we don't know anything about died.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we see his reaction to his father passing, it's like, it's obviously different from a parental death than a romantic death.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Maybe they've just written him more like fully fleshed out because before, I don't know. You're right. Season 1 Sam is a little bit. He's a little bit flat sometimes, but I already am enjoying him more. I think they've just given him more like emotional nuance in these last 2 episodes, and he really gets. And he's definitely playing like off of deep. They were trying to do like almost like separate storylines for them at some points in season 1. Like, oh, I'm going this way. Like, I want to go back to school. Like, I will be a hunter. But this time they're sort of both working towards a goal now of like defeating the demon, and I think that helps the relationship and also like how they're reacting to things sort of together, so you get a better contrast between them. They're more defined as separate people. I said that before, like in the first season sometimes their personalities are just almost identical, whereas here they feel like 2 separate people. What are we feeling about this conversation with Joe?
Hated it.
Can I be honest with you? See, normally I'd be hitting on you so fast and make your head spin, but these days, I don't know.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
It's okay, I get it.
But yeah, it's inherently kind of like creepy. Like, oh yeah, I'd definitely be sleeping with you right now. But I'm too sad.
Yeah. But like that doesn't make it okay. Anyway,
No.
I hate it. I really don't like it. And then Ash makes another appearance.
Yeah. Or also, Ash gets like the first near F-bomb of the series. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Run into another one?
Where you guys been? Waiting for it?
We were working a job, Ash. Clowns?
Clowns? What the?
You got something for us, Ash?
But here, Ash is just saying what we were all thinking when we saw the title of the episode. Just clowns. What the
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like so Ash has been waiting for them, and you know he's found the signs. He's put it all together. He brings out his like weird looking laptop that has like cables all over it and stuff. It's supposed to look like, to me, it looks like 80s hacker. Do you know what I mean by 80s hacker like aesthetic?
Yeah. He's taking
Jerry
it
Riggs
apart.
Ghostbusters equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's great. And he kind of says to them, like, you know, any time that this demon's going to, like, rear its head again, I can track it down. I can't find it now, but we need to wait for it to reappear, and then, like, I'll kind of, like, give you a call, and you can go and get it. Sam asks him how he learned to do all of this, and he's like, oh, yeah, I went to MIT. And I love this because Sam's like, MIT? And Ash is like, oh, yeah, it's a school in Boston. Like, he thinks that Sam doesn't know. Like, I love that so much.
So why do you think he didn't like flex that he went to also an Ivy League school? Like, because he went to Stanford. Like, to me, that would have been like maybe it was an old Sam moment that he would have been like, well, I went to Stanford.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Maybe he's also realizing he's not the smartest hunter out there.
Oh.
I have feelings on what they did with Ash in this episode. I'm not an Ash truther. There are people out there who feel that something happened between Ash and Dean or ship Ash and Dean, and I'm not one of those people. But there are things in this episode that I can't ignore, and they upset me. Like, I'm like, why did you do this though? But why? And so there's some subtle ones, and then there are some that are just not subtle, and I can't unsee it. So, like, at some point, Dean says, I like you, and that's nice. Like, that works. But the thing that really got my attention is Ash has this line when they give him the research material. He says, I'm on it like Divine on Doggy Dookie. Do either of you know what that means? Or what that's from?
Yeah, that's a John Waters reference.
Yeah, so he's referencing Divine and her partner John Waters. And they were, like, the drag power couple of the 70s and 80s. Before there was RuPaul, there was Divine. Mainstream Americans knew who Divine was. She is so well known that Ursula from The Little Mermaid was based on her. And so she was famously in this movie, Hairspray, from John Waters in, like, 88. Ash is referencing this movie called Pink Flamingos. That was such a moment that Pink Flamingos went on to become, like, a symbol for gay bars after this movie came out, that you would know that a bar was a gay bar because there were pink flamingos in it. And actually, later on in the series, Dean will be in a bar that's covered in pink flamingos.
Wow.
So there's this bottle thing that happens where Dean drinks out of a beer, puts it down, and then Ash drinks out of the same beer. Yeah. If just that had happened, I wouldn't think about it much. It's something that used to happen in old movies in the Hays Code to be like a placeholder for a kiss that they couldn't show on screen. And the bottle has like a little bow and arrow on it, like a little Cupid bow and arrow. It's just, but the fact that happened in addition to the Pink Flamingos reference, and just there's this little computer moment that ends up in all of these compilations people make, like. And now that I have the goggles on and I'm looking for it, they have this little moment where, like, Jensen slides the folder over and puts on his, like, flirty Dean face and voice, like, see what you make of it. I'm not convinced, but there's just all of these little things, and I don't understand why they're here, and it bothers me. Like, when you put them all together, you're like, what? Why? Why the hell would Ash make this comment about Divine? Except to, like, see if Dean is, you know, part of a member of the tribe and gets the reference. And it just flies over the audience's head. I think it flies over Dean's head. Why? Just why? Yeah,
it's a good question. And probably one that obviously never gets answered, as none of our questions ever do. Yeah.
That little stupid moment where he's touching the computer and Ash just has his face just like, what? Like, why do you think you can touch my computer? I think of that as a man-challenged sort of moment, but a lot of people like to point to that and be like, see, something was going on between them.
That, I think, is...
I'm just not one of them.
Yeah, no, I don't see it either. I see it as more of like, this is my territory, why are you touching it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so interesting, like, you're right, because why put all these little, like, references into these episodes? Like, what almost like, what was the point? Like, what are you wanting people to read into this? Because you're right. Okay, yes, one, like, pop culture reference. There's lots of pop culture references in Supernatural generally. Okay, fine. So yeah, I could let one pop culture reference go. Oh, okay, like, maybe, but then, like, it comes up again later on. Or, like, there's this extra, like, thing as well. And it just, like, builds and builds and builds. And you're like, am I crazy? Or what were they trying to say?
I think that's the tagline of the show, actually.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? What are they trying to say?
It's like they were kind of like they do the entire show. They were trying to maybe hint at something, because Ash was kicked out of MIT for fighting.
Yeah.
Well, what was he fighting? Like, because obviously you can't judge people by how they look. Like, yeah.
This is really what got me rewatching the show after the confession, is just I needed to know when it had started, like, for myself, and then I ended up falling off the cliff and with everybody else. But so I just started looking for first things with Castiel, but then just how early does Dean end up coded? And I couldn't believe what I was seeing with Ash here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, okay, just out of my own head, there is more chemistry between Dean and Ash in this episode than there is between Dean and Joe, who was brought in to be like the female love interest. And I'm just saying that, like, it's very clear to see in the scene, and whether it's just like supposed to be read as like admiration because I don't know, you're a cool dude who clearly likes rock music and like is on my level, or whether it's something else, it still counts.
It could also be the fact that we all know that Kripke can't write women for shit.
Right.
I mean, this is the thing.
Like, so it could have very well been that he just didn't know how to write Joe in a way that's like meaningful. So they're like, well, let's have Ash there and kind of see how that goes, kind of thing.
Well, it's like he doesn't know how to write someone that's not just Madonna and a conquest, right? Like Joe's there because the network was forcing him to include a love interest or a female character. We know later he hates the Roadhouse. I think it's the only example that I know of like network interference where so many of the fans love the network interference as opposed to what it was trying to be before. But honestly, Kripke, if you can't write women, just write a male character and then make them female. I'll like it more. They worked out with Elaine in Seinfeld.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I love that the conclusion that we came to was like, oh, they're just so bad at writing women that they accidentally just made everything a little bit gay.
Or very, very gay.
Yeah.
But then beyond, oops, we can't write women for shit, and therefore we end up with everyone shipping the men in our show. This is intentional. Like, I have to imagine that 95% of the people watching the show don't know what Divine on Doggy Dookie means, and that it's from this incredibly gay movie from the 70s.
But if this fugly bastard raises its head, I'll know. I mean, I'm on it like Divine on Dog Dookie.
What do you mean?
Ellen invites them to stay the night, and we've gone from, you know, I hate your father and I've cut him off completely, to you can stay the night even though I've barely met you and you actually went and took this case in a different town.
Well, so she's like a roadhouse for hunters, so I don't think it's that unusual. She probably does like offer. I don't think they necessarily have rooms, but if someone needs a room, or if you're Ash, you just sleep on the pool table. Dean's response is,
Thanks, but no. No, something I gotta finish.
Okay.
I just wrote here, Sam talking about John at the end is going to make Annabelle so angry. We should let her go off.
Well, no, this one didn't get me so much, honestly. The other things in this episode did more. The thing that I noticed about this scene, this is the first time that we see Jared or Sam in a V-neck, and Dean is in a crew neck. And I'm wondering if this is where it started, of like, because after this, it's always V-necks for Sam and always crew necks for Dean.
That's so true.
I never noticed. Not once.
I don't know why it stuck out to me, but I was like, oh.
I did notice Jensen was in a V in the Reaper episode, in the previous episode, and I was like, the hospital clothes are not a V-neck t-shirt. They're just trying to make him look appealing. So I think this is very funny. I didn't pick up on this at all.
Okay, right, let's get into it. So look.
I watched it twice. I watched it one time, and I just had to watch it, and then I had to watch it again to like actually write notes on it. And even still, I was like, I don't know what to say.
I did the same thing. I watched this twice, at least twice. So Dean's fixing the Impala. Sam comes over and he kind of tells him, like, you know, you were right. And he goes in and talks about his relationship with John, and there's a lot in here.
I'm sorry that the last time I was with him, I tried to pick a fight. I'm sorry that I spent most of my life angry at him. I mean, for all I know, he died thinking that I hate him. So you're right. What I'm doing right now, it is too little. It's too late.
And he really feels guilty. You know, Sam's saying that he's not all right. And I just put here, like, he looks so young in this scene.
Yeah.
Did you just, like, the styling in this is great. He looks so young. And I just, like, please give him a hug. Like, it clearly needs a hug. And then he says that he's not okay.
And I'm not all right. Not at all. But neither are you. That much I know. I'll let you get back to work.
And then they kind of like linger for a moment where there like clearly should have been some kind of hug, but Sam just walks off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This really cemented the differences between the grief that he felt for Jessica and the grief that he felt for John.
Yes.
If Sam had been like this for Jessica, maybe he would have been more sympathetic.
Yeah.
For season 1, because he still like harbored those feelings of guilt for Jessica, but like it never came across as this devastating. Because it's shared grief, that's probably why it feels more like relatable, because every time that Sam brought up Jessica, Dean would kind of make jokes and kind of brush it aside, and you know, the amount of times that he was like, oh, you know, you should hook up with somebody else to try and forget about her, kind of thing. Well, Dean's not going to be saying stuff like, well, you should get over John. Like, he's not going to be saying that, because if anything, like, out of the two, Dean loved John the most.
Yeah.
He didn't get that love back, but he definitely loved that man with all his being. I really don't know what to say about this other than, like, outside of the story of it, like, the acting in it is amazing. Awards all around. For especially like for Jared in this, the building of tears in his eyes and everything, and like you said, how he looked so young, like it really spoke to me. And fortunately I haven't lost a parent, but like this is what I would imagine it feels like. Absolutely, like, I'm not okay. I don't think it was necessary for him to say, but neither are you. I feel like that kind of cheapened what he had just said, but it does lead in really well to what happens next.
Like, saying that, like, I think it was really good through this whole episode how they were still physically scarred from the previous, like, the car crash and being in the hospital, and it really stood out on like Sam's face here particularly. Like, he had bruising all around his eyes. Whenever it shot back to Dean, you could still see the big cut on his forehead. I wish that they'd kept Dean's scar hit, like his forehead scar, because like, think how much of a formative moment this is, like with John dying and everything. Like, the permanent reminder of that would have been so interesting, I think. And it's such a shame that they kind of didn't, but I'm so glad they kept that continuity from the last episode, because I think it just adds like another layer of emotional weight to the scene where they're still like, it's literally been like a week and a half, right? Obviously it's still there, and like it's not healed yet.
And neither have they.
Exactly.
We're all building to this moment of Dean taking the rage out, and this car is the only valuable thing that Dean has ever owned in his entire life. And in fact, he doesn't even first take it out in the car. He first takes out the window of a different car. And it's only afterwards that he like can consider going at the Impala.
So, I mean, it is kind of interesting because he smashes that window, and then you can still see he's so angry, and he looks at to me, the way I saw it, he looks at the car in disdain, right?
Right.
So it's like he could have continued to beat this other car, but he's like, this car is not who I'm angry at. I'm angry at my car. So the question becomes, like, who is the car representing at this point?
Right.
Is it John or is it him?
So before it was Dean's car, it was also John's car, right?
Yeah.
So most of his life, it was John's car. And like you said, John has lectured Dean about taking care of the car, and now that it's all destroyed, he's trying to fix it. He's like still wearing the signs of his trauma. But then there's this ongoing theory about the car being Dean himself. So if he's taking it out on the car, is it actually just a moment of self-harm? Like Dean didn't just nearly die. Dean did die.
Yeah.
In all essence, yeah. We talk about like the fact that we think Dean was ready to go with the Reaper before he gets resurrected.
Yes.
So is he angry that his dad sacrificed himself for him and therefore he has to take it out on the car? Or is he angry at John in general? Or is it... I personally think it's actually a mixture of both. At this point. He... Obviously, I think it's also just because he's so angry. One kind of like technical thing, because I've watched it multiple times. So the first time he hits the car, you kind of like... You're like at his level, and then you go above the car, and you can already see some damage that wouldn't have actually been there because he only hit it once. Obviously, they only have a few takes. So in terms of like camera angles, do you think one when he's above is John, and then one where he's close is him, and he completely destroys the car when it's him?
Annabelle!
Sorry to ruin your night.
This is exactly what I'm here for. Exactly what I'm here for. Just, also it's just Sam, the way that Sam was talking about John, which we know from earlier episodes and later episodes, he experienced abuse that, like, maybe Sam doesn't even know about, but Sam certainly didn't experience.
Right.
And meanwhile, he's feeling guilty about John sacrificing himself for him, and he will be dealing with that for a long time. But there's also this just huge burden that John has laid on him about Sam. And if there is rage about anything going on right now, it's this monumental weight that's just been put on his shoulders by John, and then John just like
disappears,
laid that on him, and then leaves.
Yeah. And what makes it worse on top of that is, like, they don't talk. They don't talk to each other. So had Dean been honest and said that, yes, John said something to me, or Dad said something to me, rather than saying no, nothing, when he was at the pyre at the beginning of the episode, some of this rage might have been alleviated.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's half the source of plot for the first few seasons of this show.
That's true.
Yeah.
They had to have it because it was the big secret.
Yeah, of
But,
course.
like, I fully read into this as like he's angry at John. I do wonder with the like smashing of the Impala whether he's almost like taking some ownership of it as well, though, because I feel like he's so angry at John, and like Dean's looked up to him for so long that, like, by destroying the Impala, it's kind of like trying to rid himself of some of that like connection to John, because he's so mad at him at the moment. And like, what else can he do? I mean, he can fix the Impala, but then it would just be the same as it was before. But he's damaging in a way that is going to be permanently damaged. Like, they're going to paint over that eventually, but the back of that car is like always going to probably show up at least some of those marks that he left on it.
He completely, like, there was nothing left of the hood. Well, not, he's not, it's the trunk, the boot. I don't know. I have two cultures looking at me, so I have to think about which word to use. So he has to completely replace that, because there's a massive hole at the end of it. Like, there's no way you can fix that. You're gonna have to find another one and just put it on there. I do think it's interesting that he went for an easily fixable place rather than, like, he didn't destroy the window like he did the other car, which you know is going to be more difficult to replace. He didn't destroy like the bonnet or the hood, which again, like,
you think it was purposeful and restrained,
controlled.
That's what you're saying.
I want to say yes, but also it's probably more of convenience. But he could have smashed the headlights or the taillights.
Yeah.
But he chose this, like, this
the
big
body
target.
of the car.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just made the bad face.
I wonder if the trunk, we're going to be on this for a while. I wonder if the trunk in itself is symbolic, in that the fact that holds all the gear that they use for hunting. And, you know, again,
his resentment for the life.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So, we already talked about this a little bit, but it's, in this episode we have a reversal of Sam and Dean, right? It started off, Dean was taking orders and he was the good little soldier. and Sam just wanted out of the life. But here we have Dean has now had the moment where he was yelling at John in the previous episode. It essentially like, why won't you care about me moment, and he's really just faced what John is in a way that he never has. And Sam has been told that, you know, Dean was dying and it was his fault, and so they both feel responsible for John's death.
And I think, like, that's definitely true. I'm interested to know how that carries on into the next episode, because I honestly do not remember whether we see them switch back again.
It's certainly carried on to the conversation at the fairgrounds, where Sam was saying that they don't want to be normal, and Dean was just so upset that Sam would no longer want to get out. That somehow, in the events of the last 2 weeks, he's been convinced to have his life in Dean's eyes like ruined by doing this. So, do we think at this point in the season, Dean wants out of the hunter lifestyle? Like, he wants Sam out. But that would mean both of them, right? Because ultimately he wants them to be all together.
I don't know.
Yes,
that's a good question. I think so. I do actually think so. Just because some of the kind of brief conversation that Dean has with Ellen, like, are you in? He kind of asks if she's in the life, and she's like, no, I just help hunters. I don't think he even considered something like that yet.
Yeah.
That you could help in the life, but not be in the life.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it gives other options. Oh.
And he was required to be as long as John is alive, but now he's not around anymore. He can make his own decisions, and he's getting dragged right back in.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I guess he's given up hope. I think that's what it is. I think because in all of season 1, it was, I want to get my family back together so we can hunt together. Well, there's at this point in Supernatural, they don't know that they can bring people back. It's like it's not an option.
There's so much in that scene. Look, is it the writing? Is it Jensen's acting? I don't know.
Yes,
but like, it's great. What a way to end an episode as well. I think it's such a. Imagine watching that and being like, what? Like it was.
And then it just ends.
It was an episode about clowns.
Well, that's going to do it for this week. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a long one, but it was good. It was really fun having you on, Charlie. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this episode.
Sharing my rants.
Like, hey, we're here for the rants. We are here for them. Definitely go follow her. Dean Was Always By on Tumblr. And next week, it's just going to be me and Amy again. And it is Bloodlust.
Just a reminder that we've put some designs up on Redbubble, which includes a sticker with the Purgatory symbol that says Purgatory Pals on it, and also a sticker that says Cursed with Knowledge. There's other things as well on there, so you'll have to go take a look. If you search for Escaping Purgatory Podcast, you will find it. I haven't ordered my sticker yet, I want to.
I'll be doing that too. So that'll be it for this week. Thank you for joining us on our journey. We had help, but unfortunately, we are still very much stuck. I think. All right. Well, it's been a long one. Thanks very much. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.